Our purpose at We is to change the dismal statistics of our people, particularly Māori and Pacifica people. We do this through helping small and medium-sized businesses to thrive. Our businesses need our help. So many have felt the pressures of lockdown and are facing challenges that they've never faced before. Challenges that are impacting their livelihoods. That is why we're bringing you this series to share stories of the people behind our businesses, their successes, their failures, their challenges, and their triumphs.
If you are already in business, we hope you will be inspired. Perhaps someone will share one piece of gold that makes a difference in your business. If you've been thinking about starting a business, we hope that you will be motivated to start your own business venture.
We hope that by sharing these stories, we can help small businesses on the road to recovery all across New Zealand, Australia, and the Pacific.
So grab your cup of tea and whakarongo mai. Kia ora te whānau, no mai, haere mai. Welcome to our cup of tea. This week must be a week of people who I have worked with, who have mentored me, coached me, and trained and helped me, and also we and Ali. And today we have Ed Hayes, who comes to us from Tipu Prosperity, who we've done a lot of work on together over the years, and now he's helping Ali and I to take We Accounting to the next level. So Ed, welcome to our cup of tea, and thank you so much for being here.
Kia ora, ngā mihi nui kia koe. Yeah, it's awesome to be here. I'll tell you what, Wendy, it's funny. We were talking about this thing, talks about stage, being on stage and backstage. And as soon as I saw the little timer go tick, 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 all of a sudden I started to get a little nervous. And it actually took me back to gigging. Because I used to gig, you may or may not know, I used to gig and used to perform to crowds of like 1 to crowds of like 1,500, 2,000. So this is the same thing. I was sitting here going, oh, hey, I'm about to get on stage. So yeah, funny little observation, but it's awesome to be here. Awesome.
It's so good. So good to have you. And it's so true, because I was saying to you before too, sometimes I'm having this really great conversation with someone that I'm about to interview in behind the scenes, and as soon as we go, it's like stage fright.
Yeah.
But for me, I find, I was going to say, but for me, it's like the total opposite. It's like beforehand, I might be a little bit like, oh gosh, okay, yep. But as soon as that video starts playing, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm switched on and I'm ready to go.
Yeah. I think that's probably the thing about you and I is that we love to perform. You know, we love to get up and share, because with Māori we've always been a sharing race of human beings, and how we used to tell our stories was all about how we would grow our individuals or our warriors or our children or whatever. So it was all through the art of kōrero atu, kōrero mai, but also waiata, performance, all of that stuff. And that's the thing that I know that you and I love to do. So that's awesome being on stage. I just love it. Sings to my heart anyway.
It's good. And I guess that's one of the reasons we did this, is because too many of us don't do this. It's like we've forgotten who we are as a people, and we hide behind the scenes. And I really do have an issue with the word humble, but mostly because I think people take it to too far a level. And we really I did a post up on LinkedIn, and I asked, why do we not have more Māori and Pacifica people in business? Because I'm going through my LinkedIn trying to find more business owners, and they all work for other organizations. A majority do. And a lot of the times they say it's because they don't see themselves, they don't have role models. And we've done that to ourselves by being humble and not putting ourselves out there. And then therefore our tamariki, our rangatahi, they don't see themselves in these spaces. So thank you for joining us and sharing your stories, so that, hopefully we can inspire somebody else to take the leap of faith and to go into business for themselves.
Yeah, kia ora. I think that word humble, I'm not a fan of that word, never have been. It holds Pacifica Māori communities back from being who they truly want to be, because we don't want to be seen as putting ourselves out there, getting our head above the parapet or whatever, to have it lopped off. So what humble sometimes means to people is we'll just let everybody else go first. But we're not on this world to let everybody else go first. We've actually got to live our life first so that we can look after the people that we love, including our parents, grandparents, children, all of that. So yeah,
So
that
true.
humble sticks to me too. So I'm with you.
I think also the other thing around humble is, I think sometimes there's an expectation that you're going alone, and you don't have to go alone. Like, you can rise above it with everybody else. You don't have to rise above it by yourself. So, if you're worrying about sticking your head out above everybody else, well, bring everybody else's up, up with you, and all be thriving. You don't have to go alone. Not saying that doing things on your own and putting yourself out there as an individual is a bad thing. Just saying that, if there really is an issue, don't do it alone. Do it with other people. Why not?
Yeah. And what you touched on earlier, in terms of, you just mentioned it before, but we spoke about it during one of our sessions today, actually, that there are a lot of Māori and Pacifica Māori people that are working for other organisations. And it comes down to, like you say, that humble part of it. We've all got aspirations, right? We've all got things that we would love to be able to achieve, both for ourselves and for the betterment of people around us. But sometimes we feel or find that that it can be daunting, and an idea or something pops up into our heads. We're somebody says we're meaning-making machines. We're also creative machines as well. We will think about things that we can go and do and what have you, but then we let fear get in the way and stop us from doing it. So yeah, I'm not saying that's the reason why people are still working for where we work, but think of it as though if you're working for a corporate and COVID has hit hard, and I know that the statistics have shown that people, rather than being at the mercy of what could happen as a result of the corporate that they're working for going out of business, they've stepped into the field and going, oh, we're going to have a crack. But like you say, Wendy, you've had some great people on this show. You'll continue to have great people on this show. And I'm sure, my invite is that if anybody wants to have a cordial with me, hopefully you'll hear something from my story today and you'll go, hey, yeah, I could have a chat with Ed about that, or that sounds great, So yeah, go along. We don't have to do it ourselves. There are plenty of people that can help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Ed, let's talk then a little bit about you and how you've gotten to where you are today. So who was a young Ed? Who were you as a tamariki?
Yeah, probably a little cheeky. Like
Why am I not surprised?
Like a lot of people. Yeah, look, I was actually brought up in a little town called Kapu until I was, what would have been about 12 years old maybe. And then my parents moved over to the East Coast, a little place called Tukumaru Bay on the East Coast, just north of Gisborne. Two totally contrasting places to be a child and being brought up. Kapu, a lot of my friends were Pākehā mates, and at the time I didn't see any difference. I didn't know what was what. To me, people were just people. I remember once I had this Pākehā girlfriend, and I don't know, I must have been 10 or 11 or something like that. And I think within about a week or 2 weeks, probably after the first time I went over to her house to pick her up to go to school, all of a sudden she didn't want to see me anymore, and I didn't understand what that was all about. And one of my mates said to me, we didn't say bro then, but if he would have said bro, he would have said, bro, it's because you're a hori. And he said, because you're a hori. And I thought, what's a hori? What, does anybody know what a hori is? So I didn't even understand. But most of my friends were Pākehā, and I just mixed and mingled. I was outgoing, fun-loving, heaps of mates, everything. Then I went to Tukumaru Bay. Now, Tukumaru Bay, there must have been like a handful of Pākehā at Tukumaru Bay, mostly a Māori place. And so the opposite happened. All of a sudden, because I was the outcast, I didn't look terribly Māori to the Māori that were there. So I wasn't, I was kind of like maybe a half caste or something like that. And I wasn't being picked for the sports teams, whereas I was usually the first one picked for the sports teams. I was ostracized, and so it was a real stretch. But the reason why we went there, and probably what makes me, all of the experiences is what make me who I am today, is my parents moved to the East Coast for a business. So my mum and dad actually purchased a fish and chip shop. I'm proud to say that the fish and chips were the third best in New Zealand at one stage, a poll that used to be run, or a test that used to be run by the Dominion Post back in the day. So very proud of that. Probably bought my fish or burgers that I cooked at that time, which got us such a good rating. So totally contrasting areas to be brought up in, totally different. But I really, it's fair to say that is where Tokomaru Bay is where I really connected with my Māori side of the whānau. So yeah, it was a little challenging to start with, but they soon found out that I was just as Māori as themselves. So it was awesome.
I don't think that your story is too dissimilar to many Māori that look, too white to be brown and too brown to be white, and so you kind of get stuck in this world of not enough Māori, not enough Pākehā, like, where do I fit? So many people I have talked to have felt that way.
Yeah, that's true. And it was different. Like Gisborne, I found. So I went to high school in Gisborne, at Gisborne Men's High, Gisborne Boys High, and that was cool, man. I really enjoyed that school. I made some great mates there. I've forgotten most of them, but the few that I've kept as good mates are still good mates. Gisborne was different again because Gisborne is a very rural city. So a lot of farmers, a lot of cow cockies. So there was, I know we're not here to talk about races, but I'm just talking about challenges that I experienced. And it was different being a young Māori in Gisborne at Boys High. So a very, very deep and rich culture at Gisborne Boys High. And it was wonderful being brought up there. But it was different. So there was a difference between Pākehā and Māori. And then when I moved up to Auckland, well, what difference? It was back to it was like being a melting pot, almost like being a youngster in Kauro again and not having a care in the world. It was awesome coming up to Auckland. But I came up here when I was 19, something like that, fresh out of high school. And I had one of those, and unfortunately, the kids that are on the line, they're on this, we're going to view this later on, that had to pay for their tuition. I had a grant from, what was it, the Māori Affairs. So it was probably one of the last grants that you could get from Māori Affairs. And I was lucky enough to stay in some accommodation that is still here on Owens Road called Te Roroa, which was sort of a Māori boys youth hostel. So I stayed there for my first year. The thing that really got me though is through all of this is I came to study engineering, and yet because my parents owned a business and I knew that business really, really well and inside out, and I could see, and here's the really important thing, I could see the choices that it gave my parents. Because when we were in Kawerau, my dad worked for the Tasman Pulp and Paper Company, and he worked with a salary, and he was there for 20 years. I remember he got a gold watch and a microwave. We're talking back in the 80s here for his 20th anniversary, which was a big deal back then, man. Not many people had microwaves, but we weren't rich, right? We weren't rich. My mum used to make my jeans. I used to get hand-me-down clothes and shit like that I had to wear. Luckily, because I had sisters, none of their stuff was handed down to me. Hey, that's probably acceptable these days, but not for me then. Yeah. So where was I going? That's right. So my parents, that they were able to make choices through the fact that they had a business. Now, the choices were is we could buy a new car. We'd never ever had a new car before. the car that we took to Tokomaru Bay was a 1972 Valiant Chrysler. That was actually a bloody taxi. My dad bought it off a taxi, so it had high Ks on it already. But then all of a sudden, my parents had a business, and we had choices. I could go shopping for new clothes. Dad could upgrade his boat, so he bought a new boat. The next step for them was, so we had the successful fish and chip shop. My dad always wanted to be a cray fisherman. He bought this new boat, and then he ended up purchasing my uncle's crayfish quota. Now, my uncle was a bit of a character. Not many people will know about crayfish quota and how that works, but back in the day, there never used to be a quota system. You worked, and however many crays you purchased or caught at the time meant that that was the allocation or a guideline for the allocation that the government would give you. My uncle had the minimum allocation, the bare minimum, and that's, yeah. And I suppose it's because he didn't like working as hard as some of the delis and Greeks and that did, because they worked bloody hard and they came out with tons and tons. So my uncle came out with just a small parcel, and my dad purchased that. So the choices that a business had afforded my parents was the opportunity to get into another business, and we could buy a new car, and they could go on holidays and things like that. Stuff that we never had before my parents had a business. So when I came to Auckland, I came up here to study, so I'm still here in Auckland. I came up here to study engineering, but I guess in my blood was always what I saw in my parents and what I could see was possible. So I was always looking for some kind of opportunity to be able to be my own man, my own person.
Yeah, that's cool. So then how did you get into it? Like, what were the steps that you took did you complete your engineering degree, or did you go off on a complete different tangent and start a business? What did you do?
Yeah, no, I didn't complete my engineering degree, but I do appreciate the New Zealand government at the time for funding. It was awesome. What I actually did was, I guess this is the thing, right? We go through school and it's the same as in life. Because I wasn't inspired to necessarily do anything at school, I only went into engineering because one day when I was burning rubbish at my parents' fish and chip shop, because they emptied out the rubbish bins and burn the rubbish every day. Probably not great that I was burning rubbish every day. But because I was, this guy that my dad knew used to be in the campground next to us, and he'd come up from Wellington every so often, and he had a chat with me over the fence and said, if you ever want to come and live in Wellington, you can do an engineering cadetship. So I thought, wow, opportunity to get out of Tokomaru Bay in Gisborne with an engineering apprenticeship. In any case, I fell out with my parents during my last year of high school. So I didn't have this guy's contact, but I thought, you know what? Engineering sounds like it's fun. I'll give it a crack. So that's what I did. I had no desire to be an engineer. The great thing now, though, is I know some things when it comes to building houses and stuff like that I may not let engineers get away with. So that's probably the one thing that's helped me. But other than that, I was probably never going to be an engineer. So what did happen? Well, I didn't do my engineering, and I ended up pumping gas. So I was just like anybody else out there that didn't know what they were going to do. We just did anything. So I started to pump gas. My probably my business acumen that I'd gained from my parents then, and plus, actually, there's a guy who used to own the service station who was amazing. He actually taught me a whole lot about business. His name is Martin Logue, and I really want to catch up with him again. A top bloke. We're talking back in the 90s here. So he actually taught me the meaning of stock and stock turn, and how much capital you needed to be able to run, and showed me the difference between margin and markup. So we're talking retail stuff here. We're talking still service sort of retail. I learned about gas, fuel. So I wasn't just the pump jockey. I ended up leaving Māori, and I was super grateful for what he taught me. But the skills that I took from him and from my parents, I then took into the oil industry. So I ended up running a few service stations and ultimately picked up one of my own. Cool. So yeah, that's kind of where that took me. I didn't do my course, but I ended up getting into business. So I've always been fluffing around with business. Anyway, I got out of the oil industry and I wanted to do something else. And I thought the corporate world looks awesome. They look like they had a great time. That looks cruisy. And a girlfriend at the time said to me, hey, if you really want to have a crack at something, go and work for Vodafone, because that'd be awesome. You know, that, like, because she was in recruitment and they were recruiting. And I left that for about a year. We split up, and in any case, I thought later on, actually, that's not a bad idea. So I went off and I got one small qualification. So it was called MCSE. Now that was NT 4.0. So that was a Microsoft qualification. Well, that opened doors for me in the telco industry. It was just a course that I did over like a week or so, but man, did that open doors. I pretty much waltzed into my my first role in telco, and I worked for Clear Communications back then, and they just couldn't stop paying me money. Like, I'd gone in business where it was hard and you had to toil, but all of a sudden I was in the corporate world, and I just kept getting promotion after promotion, and they kept paying me more and more and more. And eventually I did work for the big corporate, Vodafone, and they too continued to just pay fantastic money and really respected what I did. But you know what? I still, even though I was there and earning great cash, I wasn't satisfied. So for that conversation that we had today about, you know, our mates and that all work in corporates and what have you, it's great at the time, you know, and it was awesome. But I had an opportunity to get out, and I managed to construct my own redundancy, which I thought was a master stroke. And so I got paid to leave, which was awesome. And then I thought, cool, what am I going to do? So I wanted to get back into business. That didn't mean I hadn't tried other businesses along the way, because I had. But it's really hard to focus on a business when I'm working for a big corporate. And because they were paying me well, and it was great for my ego, because I was well known in the industry, that it was just too easy to stay on. I felt it was like the biggest holiday for 14 years of my life. And potentially that held me back.
And that's why a lot of people stay there and don't go into business.
That's right. It's not fulfilling. One of the things that I found is that I was doing all this great work, and this is the challenging thing about people that work in corporates, is they're doing all these great things and they have these great ideas, and then all of a sudden people aren't listening to them, and the change that they felt that they made in the past and the change that they can make now is not the same. It's not the same change anymore. And so I got itchy feet. I guess the thing is that you don't have to stay in that corporate. It is hard to leave, though. It pays so well, and everything is. It's hard to leave.
So now that you're in business, Ed, what's been some of the challenges that you've faced, and how have you overcome them now that you've seen the light?
Yeah, well, this is a new business for me. So when I say new, I've been at it for a year, and I've been working at it with a bloke named Trent, who we both know. Trent, I think, is a fantastic coach. We've shared another fantastic coach as well, actually, Dan Batten. He is a fantastic coach. So I just happen to be now in the business of coaching business owners. However, my ideal client, and this is what I think everybody should focus on, is accountants. So hence I'm working with you and Ellie and others around New Zealand and over in Australia to help them grow their accounting businesses. Growth means different things to different people. It doesn't have to mean that all of a sudden, we've got more revenue. That isn't necessarily what it means. We've got time choices we want to make, and sometimes we need the cash to afford other choices that we want to make. So my biggest challenge, Wendy, in getting into this particular business was growing my confidence in being able to give across to people what I truly could give them. Because I come from a unique area of their business in the operational field, as you know, and I've worked with accountants as well now for a few years around helping them grow their, not grow, but really fix up their engine room. So the engine room for an accounting firm is in their compliance work, doing annual sets of accounts for business owners, doing cash flows, doing all of that stuff. So I help accountants build that up. So my biggest challenge was actually was myself, Wendy, confidence is all about yourself. And in my case, it was about myself. I lacked the confidence and the belief in myself that I had the goods to give to accountants. So that was my challenge from leaving the telco industry, where I was a rock star, into, well, I call myself a rock star, into accounting firms. However, what I didn't realize is I had a great reputation there as well through what I built with accountants. I just didn't believe in it myself. Trent helped me believe that. He helped me build on that confidence to be able to communicate with accountants in that way. And then hard graft. You got to do the mahi, you know. So I had to build my product, and that's my, if you could think of it, that's my party trick to attract accountants. My party trick is that I can free up their engine rooms to give them better choices in terms of what they can pivot into next. Because to be fair, if an accounting firm owner doesn't have time, Wendy, what have they got? Yeah. So my biggest challenge was myself, and the belief in myself that I had the goods. And I would say that that's probably the biggest challenge for a lot of people out there, belief in themselves.
It is, and I see it a lot, particularly with people who are going into that coaching space, or you know, are starting off in business on their own. I don't know how many people I've spoken to who want to get into business, and they keep saying, "Oh no, I'm just not ready yet. Oh no, I've just got to do this, and I've just got to do that." And I'm like, "No, you just got to get out of your own way and start. Like, it's got nothing to do with anything else other than your own confidence." That's really what stops people from getting into business. I find a lot of people in the beginning, in the first place.
Yeah. And having a coach is really important. It is really important. You know, like Dan, he was fantastic, and Trent later on, you know, or more recently, he drove me to build and to create and to achieve. He didn't do any of that. Like, he didn't do it. I did it. But what he did was just nudge me gently in the right direction, to be able to make it happen. So, like yourselves, Wendy, both you and Ellie, you do the same for your business owners, right? So you help guide them and coach them in the best, to help them become the best that they can be. And sometimes we just need that. Like, I needed it. I knew I was going to be good at this. But and the funny thing is that when I did a strat plan with Trent, and I was sitting there with him, all the cock and pomp in the world, and he goes to me, we're sitting down on the second day of our strategy plan, and he goes to me, "So Ed, what products are you going to sell?" I'm like, "Huh, what? What do you mean? What am I going to sell?" "Yeah, what products are you going to sell? You know, like you know, like, what's your thing? What are you going to be able to give to them?" I don't know. You know, so I thought, yeah, I'll be great at this, but I didn't have all the answers. So you know, being with Trent, he helped me grow that. And I just think that people that are going out of business and having a crack for themselves, find a mentor, find a coach. You know, a mentor is gonna be like your granddad that sits next to you on the sofa, that tells you all of the war stories that they did, and to help you try and avoid it. But a coach actually helps you gets down on the field with you, you know, and kicks you up the ass when you start, you know, slacking off and stuff like that, and guides you and helps you to see the things that are holding you back. And that's the most important. Because I know a lot of people go into business, you know, like I left the corporate world. I knew I was going to be great at this. I just didn't know at what. But a lot of people go into business and they'll leave now, given COVID is so relevant in here, and they'll leave and they'll go, "Shit, I'm going to try something. I'm just going to go and give it a crack and have a go." And then they get stuck in a job that isn't actually a corporate. It's actually they become a slave to themselves and, unfortunately, to their clients and their businesses, because that's a business. It actually doesn't serve them, and that's what happens. So, best advice I can give to get over that self is get a coach.
Yeah, great advice.
Take some guidance.
Absolutely. And yeah, Ali and I have had many coaches over the years who just help and give lots of different things at the time that you need them. And it's really good. I mean, we've done some great work with you. We have another coach who I interviewed on Monday who helps with mindset stuff. So absolutely, they'll hold you accountable. But like you said, they give you that little tap in the right direction just when you need it.
I see the half an hour is up, but I could just go on and on. Is that a bad thing? But I got to respect everybody's time in that.
It's a normal thing for us to get to half an hour and go, oh my gosh, we feel like we've only just started.
And I feel like you've
Okay.
only asked 1 or 2 questions.
I know. So that's what I said. Sometimes I don't have to ask many questions and you just take it away. But as long as there's plenty of gold, which there has been, it's been really awesome. But so just before we do leave, I mean, I know you've said one of the things that you'd like to give as advice is to get a coach. But is there anything else that you'd like to leave our listeners with today before we leave?
Yeah, I think it's more like if you have the belief or the essence of some inspiration, and you feel like that you can give it a crack. You know, you're in this corporate world or this corporate job, and there's been some uncertainty around what's going to happen in the next few weeks or whatever. Some people that I've coached in the past, you know, Wendy, have said to me, "Oh, I can't do that now because this might happen." And I'd say to them, "You're already in this. You're already actually in that place, and that place might have been no clients or no cash or what have you. So what's holding you back? The only thing that's holding you back is your fear about what the next step is. We'll get clear about what the next step is. So any advice I can give is if you have some inspiration on something that you'd like to do in terms of a business, reach out to people and ask questions. Don't let it sit in here, because 10 years will go past and you'll rue the opportunity.
So true. Anyway, Ed, like we were saying, we could probably talk forever, and there are so many questions that we can still be asking. But I really appreciate your time today and your sharing. And I know it's going to resonate with so many people. So yeah, so Ed, if someone wants to reach out to you, how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, sweet. So my email address is ed at Tipu Prosperity. I think you've got it there, TIPU and the word prosperity.com. So if anybody wants to have a kōrero, especially around building up the courage. So one of my core values is mana. So building up the courage to take the first step. Happy to have a kōrero. Happy.
Was it ed at tipuprosperity.com?
Correct. Yeah.
There we go. I'm going to show it now. There you go. How about
Awesome.
that?
Look at that tip.
So yeah, so jump in and flick him an email and yeah, get in touch. I'm sure he'd love to share with you any other stories he's got too. So once again, Ed, thank you so much for being with us today, for having a cup of tea with me. And everybody else, I will see you on Monday at 8 p.m.